They pushed the old man out, not knowing he owned the hotel #viral videos #tale. True wealth is what? He told her once. What did he told her once? That is not the money in your account, my daughter. It is what that money allows you to remember, and who it allows you to lift on your way up. Story of Regina Okoro, who had been on her feet since 5:30 that morning. She was 26, with skin the color of polished ebony and a quietness about her that some mistook for shyness and others, more perceptively, recognized as discipline. She wore the hotel's navy blue cleaning uniform, a size too large at the shoulders, and her hair was cut low and neat beneath a matching cap. Stay tuned to the end to know happened to her. Before we begin, if you love stories that will shake your heart and change how you see people, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Drop a comment below and tell us where you are watching from and your local time. Now, let us get into this story, because what you are about to see, nobody saw it coming. The sun in Abuja did not rise gently. It came up over the hills behind Maitama like a furnace door swinging open, and by 9 in the morning the air outside the Grand Aurelia Hotel shimmered above the tarred driveway. Emeka stood at the edge of that driveway in a faded gray agbada, his sandals worn thin at the heel, a walking stick in one hand and nothing else. He was 68 years old, and he had walked nearly a kilometer from the bus stop because the Okada man had taken one look at his clothes and asked for fare twice the going rate. Emeka had simply nodded, thanked him, and continued on foot. He was not in a hurry to prove anything. Not yet. His grandson, Kelechi, was a junior manager at the Grand Aurelia, the boy's first real job, the pride of the family, even if Emeka had not yet found the right moment to tell him who, exactly, owned the family that was proud of him. There would be time. For now, Emeka only wanted to see the boy work, to see if the young man he had helped raise after his son's death had kept the values Emeka tried to plant in him. So he walked toward the gate. 2 security men stood under the shade of the gatehouse, sunglasses on, batons hanging from their belts like ornaments of authority. The taller one, a man named Bitrus, straightened as Emeka approached. "Oga, where you dey go?" Bitrus asked, not unkindly, but not warmly either. "I want to see my grandson," Emeka said. "He works here." "Your grandson?" Bitrus's mouth twitched, somewhere between amusement and irritation. "Which staff resemble your grandson?" "Kelechi. Kelechi is." "He is. Ihen see this one o." The second guard, younger, laughed and nudged Bitrus. "Old man come day find work for staff entrance, now go say na grandson." "I am not looking for work," Emeka said quietly. "I only want to greet him." "You want make I call Kelechi make him come carry beggar from gate?" Bitrus said, and though he smiled as he said it, there was no kindness in the smile. "Oga, this place no be for your type. Make you comet small, before Oga manager see you here and vex." Emeka did not argue. He had learned, in nearly 7 decades of life, that arguing with a closed door rarely opened it. It only wasted the breath he would need for the walk he was about to take, away from this gate, around the side of the property, where the hotel's high perimeter wall gave way to a smaller service gate near the kitchens. He had built this hotel himself, 12 years ago, and he still remembered every inch of its boundary, drawn in his own hand on the architect's first sketches. But he did not go to the service gate to assert his ownership. He went to sit on the low concrete curb beneath the flame trees that lined Aminu Kano Crescent, in the thin shade, to rest his legs and watch, for a while, how his hotel treated the people who had nothing to offer it. It did not take long to learn the answer. Regina Okoro had been on her feet since 5:30 that morning. She was 26, with skin the color of polished ebony and a quietness about her that some mistook for shyness and others, more perceptively, recognized as discipline. She wore the hotel's navy blue cleaning uniform, a size too large at the shoulders, and her hair was cut low and neat beneath a matching cap. She was wiping down the brass rails near the staff exit when she saw the old man through the gap in the hedge, sitting alone on the curb outside, in the climbing heat, his walking stick across his knees, his head bowed as though resting or praying. Something in her chest tightened. She thought of her own father, gone 8 years now, who had spent his final months sitting exactly like that outside their compound in Nyanya, waiting for a kindness that rarely came. She finished the rail quickly, then ducked into the small staff pantry and took a sachet of water from the crate, one of the ones the cleaners were permitted for their own break, and from her purse she withdrew 500 naira, nearly a third of what remained of her week's transport money. She did not think very long about it. She rarely did, when it came to this kind of decision. Thinking too long was usually just another way of talking yourself out of being kind. She slipped out through the service gate. "Good morning, sir," she said, crouching slightly to meet his eyes. "Please, take this water. The sun is much today." Emeka looked up at her, startled out of his thoughts. He took the sachet she offered, his old fingers closing around it gratefully, and only then noticed the folded naira notes she pressed into his palm beside it. "My daughter," he said slowly, "you should not." "Please, sir, it is nothing," Regina said, already straightening up, glancing back toward the gate as if worried someone would see. "I hope your day improves." "God bless you." She turned and was gone before he could say more, back through the gap in the hedge, back to her rails and her mop and the long list of rooms still waiting for her on the 3rd floor. Emeka sat with the water sweating cool against his palm and the naira notes folded in his fist, and for the first time since Beatrice had turned him away from his own gate, something in his old chest loosened. He did not yet know her name, but he intended to learn it. Madame Rebecca Dunladi had run the Grand Aurelia's day-to-day operations for 6 years, and in that time she had built her reputation on 2 things: spotless service standards and an instinct for anything that threatened the hotel's image. She was 50 years old, sharp-suited, sharp-tongued, with a corner office that overlooked the front driveway, which was precisely how she came to see, on the grainy feed of the gate camera replayed at her request that afternoon, one of her cleaning staff handing money to a vagrant at the service entrance. She called Regina to her office before the girl had even finished her shift. "Sit," Rebecca said, though there was no warmth in the invitation. Regina sat, hands folded in her lap, already sensing from the set of Rebecca's jaw that this would not be a pleasant conversation. "You gave money to a beggar at my gate," Rebecca said. "In hotel uniform, where anyone, any guest, any investor driving past, could see a Grand Aurelia staff member handling vagrants like it is a charity outpost." "Madam, he was just an old man. He looked thirsty, tired. You only used company time, in company uniform, to create exactly the kind of image this hotel cannot afford," Rebecca said, cutting her off. "Do you understand what kind of clientele we serve here? Senators, oil executives, foreign diplomats. They do not come to the Grand Aurelia to watch our staff distributing alms to beggars at the gate like it is a motor park." "It will not happen again, madam," Regina said, though even as she said it, some stubborn part of her did not fully believe it, did not believe in her heart that she had been wrong. "No," Rebecca agreed, "it will not. Because as of today, your employment here is terminated." The words landed like a slap. Regina opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Madam, please. This job, I have a younger brother in school. I have rent. Please, I beg you, it was just water and small money. I did not. Collect your things from the locker room. HR will process your final pay." Rebecca had already turned back to the papers on her desk, her tone final, dismissive, the conversation already filed away and forgotten in her mind. "Security will escort you out." Regina sat for one more moment, willing herself not to cry in front of this woman, then rose, smoothed down her uniform out of old habit, and walked out of the office with her spine straight even as everything inside her had gone hollow. She did not yet know that the old man she had given water to had watched the entire exchange, not through the window, but through something far more reliable, a phone call from Beatrice, who, uneasy about how he had treated the old man that morning, had mentioned the incident to a colleague, who mentioned it to a manager, who, by the strange small-world machinery of any workplace, had let it reach the ear of someone who reported, eventually and indirectly, to Emeka himself. 3 days later, Regina was sitting in the cramped parlor of her rented room in Nyanya, going through the newspaper's classified pages for the 4th morning in a row, when a black SUV pulled up outside her compound, entirely too large and too clean for the narrow, rutted street. The man who stepped out was not the beggar she remembered. He wore a white agbada trimmed in gold thread, a cap set at a dignified angle, and though his face was the same face, the same lined kindness around the eyes, everything else about him had changed. "Regina Okoro?" he asked, when she came hesitantly to her gate. "Yes, sir," she said, then stopped, her eyes widening as recognition arrived. "Sir, you are the man from the gate?" "Chief Emeka Smith," he said, and allowed himself a small smile at her stunned expression. "Owner of the Grand Aurelia Hotel, and several other properties besides. I disguised myself that day, as I do from time to time, because I find that the way people treat a man with nothing tells me far more about their character than the way they treat a man they believe holds power over them." Regina said nothing. Her mind was still catching up. "You were the only person at my hotel who showed me kindness that day," Emeka continued. "A security man turned me away from my own gate. My own grandson, working inside, never came down to investigate the commotion. But you, a cleaner on a cleaner's wage, gave me water and money you could not spare, and asked for nothing in return. And for that kindness, my own manager fired you." "I do not regret it, sir," Regina said quietly, surprising herself with her own steadiness. "I would do it again." "I know," Emeka said. "That is exactly why I am here." He explained then what he had come to offer, a position as his executive assistant, working directly under him at the Grand Aurelia's head office, a role with a salary nearly 6 times what she had earned as a cleaner, full benefits, and responsibilities she had never imagined herself holding. Regina's hands trembled as she listened. "Sir, I have no experience for such a position. I only finished secondary school. I do not know how to—" "Character is not taught in a classroom, my daughter," Emeka said gently. "The rest I will teach you myself. What I cannot teach is what you already have." She accepted, of course. What followed was a blur of paperwork, a new uniform that was not a uniform at all but proper office attire, and a return to the Grand Aurelia not through the service gate this time, but through the front entrance, past a stunned Beatrice, who did not recognize her at first and then, recognizing her, could not meet her eyes. Regina's rise did not go unnoticed, and it did not go uncontested. Within her first week in the executive offices, she became aware of the particular silence that fell over conversations when she entered a room, and the particular way certain eyes followed her down the corridor, not with curiosity, but with something colder. Dana, 29, was the most visible of these eyes. She had worked in the executive office for 3 years, had been passed over twice for promotion, and watched with open disdain as a former cleaner was elevated above her in a matter of days. "You know how she got that position," Dana said one afternoon, just loud enough for Regina to hear from the adjoining cubicle, addressing a colleague but clearly performing for a wider audience. "Old man, young girl, sudden promotion. Use your imagination." "Dana," the colleague murmured, glancing nervously toward Regina's door. "What?" "I am only saying what everybody is thinking," Dana said. "Chief does not just hand out executive positions because somebody gave him sachet water. There is always a price for this kind of miracle." Regina heard every word and said nothing, though her hands, typing a memo at her desk, had gone very still. She had expected resentment. She had not expected it to settle so quickly into something with teeth. Madame Rebecca, transferred from hotel operations to a liaison role in the same head office after Emeka quietly restructured the management following Regina's firing, found in Dana a useful ally, both women bound by the same wound of having misjudged and been overruled by a girl they considered beneath them. "She makes mistakes daily," Rebecca told Dana one evening, over suspicious cups of tea in the small kitchenette. She does not know our systems. One day, that ignorance will cost her badly, and when it does, I want to be the one who reports it to Chief myself. And if it does not happen on its own? Dana asked, something sly entering her voice. Rebecca said nothing for a long moment, only stirred her tea, the silence between them heavy with an understanding neither woman needed to say aloud. It happened on a Thursday. Regina arrived at her desk to find 2 men from corporate security waiting for her, along with Madame Rebecca, whose expression carried the particular satisfaction of someone who has been waiting a long time for a moment like this. "Regina Okoro," one of the security officers said, "we need you to come with us. There has been a serious matter regarding a financial transaction from your office workstation." "What transaction?" Regina asked, her stomach dropping even as her mind raced to understand. 300,000 naira was transferred from the hotel's operating account to a personal account 2 nights ago, Rebecca said, before the officer could answer. "At 11:47 p.m. From your login. From your machine." "I was not even in the building at that hour," Regina said. "I left at 6. You can check the gate logs." "The login does not lie," Rebecca said coolly. "Whatever excuse you have prepared, you can give it to Chief directly. He has asked to see this matter resolved personally." Regina sat through the next hour in a state of controlled panic, replaying every moment of the previous days, trying to understand how her credentials could have been used for a transfer she had no part in. She thought of Dana's comment in the corridor, "There is always a price for this kind of miracle," and a cold, sick suspicion began to take shape, though she had no proof, nothing but instinct, and instinct alone would not save her. When she was finally called into the boardroom, Emeka was already seated at the head of the table, his expression unreadable, flanked by the head of IT security and a folder thick with printouts. "Sit, Regina," he said, and though his voice was gentle, there was a gravity to it she had not heard from him before. "Sir, I did not do this," Regina said immediately. "I do not know how my login was used. I was not in the building." "I believe you," Emeka said simply, and the room seemed to exhale around her, though Rebecca's face tightened with disbelief. "Sir, with respect," Rebecca interjected, "the evidence is clear. Her logins can be used by people who are not their owners, Rebecca," Emeka said, not unkindly, but with finality. "That is precisely why I asked our IT team to conduct a full digital trace of the workstation before this meeting, rather than simply accepting the surface evidence as you presented it to me." The head of IT security, a quiet man named Mr. Audu, cleared his throat and opened his laptop. "Chief asked us to pull the full access logs, not just the transaction record. Regina's login session ended at 6:04 p.m. that evening, verified by both the system logout timestamp and the gate exit log, which shows her badge leaving the premises at 6:09 p.m. He turned the laptop so the table could see the screen. The fraudulent transaction occurred at 11:47 p.m. That session was opened using a secondary access method, a physical override key card, at 11:31 p.m., 16 minutes before the transfer. "Override key cards are only held by department heads," Emeka said quietly. "Yes, sir," Mr. Audu confirmed. "And our CCTV footage from the executive corridor shows the office being entered at 11:29 p.m. He clicked to the next slide, a still frame from the camera feed. The image showed, with unmistakable clarity, Dana's face under the corridor light, an override key card visible in her hand as she let herself into Regina's office. The silence in the room was absolute. "There must be some mistake," Rebecca said, though her voice had lost its earlier certainty. "Dana would have no reason to, wouldn't she?" Emeka asked, and there was something in his tone now that made even Rebecca fall quiet. "Mr. Audu, the destination account for the transferred funds, whose name is on it?" "The account belongs to a Dana Okanji," Mr. Audu said. "Confirmed against the bank's account holder records this morning." Rebecca's face went through several expressions in quick succession: disbelief, calculation, and finally something like fear, as she understood how close her own complicity had come to being exposed alongside Dana's. Dana was called into the boardroom 10 minutes later, and within moments of being shown the footage, her composure cracked entirely. She did not deny it for long. Faced with time-stamped CCTV and a bank account in her own name, denial was a luxury she could not afford. She admitted, eventually, through tears that seemed more about consequence than remorse, that she had used Regina's office and login specifically so that suspicion would fall away from herself. "I worked here 3 years," she said, her voice breaking. 3 years, and a cleaner walks in and becomes executive assistant in a week. You do not know what that does to a person, sir. "I know exactly what jealousy does to a person," Emeka said, his voice quiet but unyielding. "It convinces them that someone else's blessing is the cause of their own lack, rather than looking honestly at their own choices. You will not work at any property under my name again, and the matter of the stolen funds will be handled by the police, not by me." Rebecca, for her part, was called to remain behind after the others were dismissed. What was said in that closed-door conversation was never repeated to the rest of the staff, but by the following week, Madame Rebecca's office sat empty, and a notice from HR confirmed she had resigned, effective immediately. Regina returned to her own desk that afternoon with her name fully cleared, the weight of the accusation lifted, though something else had settled in its place, a clearer understanding of how quickly the ground beneath her could shift, and how much it had mattered that the man at the top of the company had chosen, in the moment it counted most, to look for truth rather than convenience. It was Gabriel who found her on the balcony outside the executive floor that evening, the city's lights beginning to flicker on across Abuja's hills, Regina's arms wrapped around herself, though the evening was not cold. Gabriel was 31, a finance officer who had transferred to the head office around the same time Regina had, and who had watched her endure the whispers and the accusation with a quiet, steady respect that had slowly, over the preceding weeks, become something more than professional admiration. "You did not deserve any of that," he said, joining her at the railing. "I keep waiting for the next thing," Regina admitted. "Like the ground will not stay solid under me. Like one day soon, somebody will decide I do not belong here after all." "You belong wherever your character has earned you a place," Gabriel said. "And I have watched you long enough to know your character is not in question. Not to anyone with sense." She glanced at him, surprised by the directness of it. "You have been watching me?" "Since your first week," he admitted, a small, sheepish smile breaking through his usual composure. "I told myself it was professional interest. It was not, entirely." They talked until the sky had gone fully dark, about small things at first, her brother in school, his mother's compound in Kaduna, the strange politics of office life, and then, over the weeks that followed, about larger things, what they each wanted from a life, what kind of partner they hoped to become, what kind of family they imagined building. Gabriel never once treated her former position as a cleaner as something to be hidden or apologized for. If anything, he spoke of it as evidence of exactly the kind of person she was, the kind who would give away her own transport money to a stranger at a gate without calculating what she stood to gain. 6 months after the night on the balcony, Gabriel took her to the same spot, the city lights spread out beneath them once more, and got down on one knee with a small velvet box he had been carrying, nervously, for nearly 2 weeks. "I do not have chief's wealth," he said, "and I do not have much beyond my salary and my mother's blessing, which I already asked for last month. But I have watched you face the worst this place could offer and remain exactly who you are. I would like to spend my life watching that. Regina, will you marry me?" She said yes before he had even finished rising from his knee, laughing through sudden tears, and somewhere in the building behind them, in his own office with the lights still on, Emeka, who had granted Gabriel a long lunch break that afternoon with no explanation beyond a knowing smile, allowed himself a quiet, private satisfaction at having been right about the both of them. The wedding was modest by the standards of the circles Regina now moved in, held in a small church in Nyanya rather than one of the city's grand event centers, because Regina had insisted, gently but firmly, that this was where she wanted to begin her married life, among the people who had known her before any of this had happened. Emeka attended, of course, seated not at the front in a place of honor, but among the other guests, and when asked by a curious cousin of Gabriel's why the great chief Emeka Smith had come personally to a cleaner's wedding, he had simply said, "She gave me water when I had nothing." I do not forget such things. But it was what Regina did in the months following her wedding that revealed, most clearly, the shape of the woman. Her new position and her new marriage had not changed. She began, quietly at first, by paying the rent for an elderly widow 2 doors down from her old compound in Nyanya, a woman who had once shared her own meager food with Regina's family during a particularly hard season years before. Then she paid the school fees for 3 children on her old street whose mother sold groundnuts by the roadside to feed them. Then, working with Gabriel, who managed the small fund's finances with the same quiet diligence he brought to everything, she established what they began calling, without any grand ceremony, simply because it was true, the Gate Fund, in honor of the gate where her own life had quietly changed forever. "You do not have to keep going back there," Gabriel told her once, gently, after a long day of visiting families in the old neighborhood. "Nobody would think less of you for moving forward and not looking back." "I would think less of myself," Regina said simply. "I have not forgotten what it costs to need help and not receive it. I do not intend to forget." Emeka, watching all of this unfold from a respectful distance, found in Regina's continued generosity the final confirmation of everything he had suspected the moment she pressed 500 naira and a sachet of water into his old hands at a service gate in the climbing Abuja heat. He had built hotels and acquired estates across half the country in his lifetime, but it was this, a young woman who refused to let success erase the memory of need, that he considered, quietly, among the truest wealth he had ever helped create. True wealth, he told her once, near the end of a long afternoon reviewing the Gate Fund's growing list of beneficiaries, is not the money in your account, my daughter. It is what that money allows you to remember, and who it allows you to lift on your way up. Regina only smiled, and turned back to the list of names, families still waiting, still hoping, on streets not unlike the one she had once called home, and began, once more, to write. Every story needs a witness. Thank you for being this one's. See you in the next story and make sure you subscribe. Thanks. God bless you.